Kody and the cameras are no longer a part of Janelle Brown's life. I'm 99.9999% sure that this is her last season because she just wrote on Instagram that she didn't want the cameras in her life anymore. This week, she went to the church leaders to ask them to let Kody go. She was with Maddie when she started this week. Their home is in North Carolina. Maddie seemed less than thrilled about her mom going back into the world of polygamy, calling the whole situation toxic. And I would just say being around these guys and having to ask their permission to leave your husband is toxic. Maddie even asked her, what will happen if they don't let you go? Then what are you going to do? Then Janelle said it would be a faith crisis. I find it very odd that they felt the need to go back to this church since nothing they do these days is at all related to the church. They drink liquor. They don't wear their clothes. They curse. They are public in their world. They reveal secrets about polygamy. They are like part of this world. They watch whatever they want to watch. They listen to the songs they want to listen to. They don't pay. So it's just sort of like they've thrown everything away from the church, but then they go back to the church to get freed. It's that one strange sort of hold it has over her. But she goes back and gets the release. And by the way, she was freed. But Kody in this show sort of lied and said that, if he didn't go get the release then or request a release, it's because they told him he couldn't have the release. So his story has changed quite a bit about this release situation. You told him? He didn't really care. He was like, well, they're going to tell you can't marry outside of the faith or whatever. And I'm like, that's fine. I don't know what that means and I don't really care. I'm going to marry who I want if I ever get married again. Juno may have told me that she was going to ask for freedom. I don't remember. It's just not something I'm tracking. Ex-wife calls me a fool for not going to the leaders and asking for a release. It's because I did. And they said, no, you can't ask for one. I think it's so weird because Kody supposedly tells her that if she gets a release, they're going to tell her that she can't get married outside of the faith. And I don't know why he would even say that to her unless he still thinks that he needs to be married to her eternally. You know what I mean? Like he's still holding on to this weird thing that he's sealed to these women for forever. Like in his thoughts, he says he's not a polygamist, but in his life or his afterworld, he still thinks he is. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of guys that are in this world that say they have all of these wives, but they really don't. And they don't even really live marriage, but they're doing it because they think that because of their belief system, it's going to get them to the highest level of heaven. So, I don't know why he would care if she went there. And then, he was initially asked about if he had spoken to Janelle about the release, and he said no. He didn't know. He couldn't remember if she had asked, and it wasn't something that he was following. And that I don't believe. If one of the wives is going to come up to him and say, I'm going to get a release. Of course, he's going to track that, and he's going to be angry, and because he's going to be humiliated in front of his former leaders of a church, and, he's going to get an earful from whoever the prophet calling him and saying, I released your wife because you abandoned her. And Janelle says that her grounds are that he says that he wants to live with Robin. He's in love with Robin. He's separated from my kids. He's separated from me. And I want to release. She's going under the grounds of abandonment that he abandoned her. Because there's only abandonment, addiction, cheating. There's only so many ways that you can get out of being a release in this world. So she's going to go on the grounds of abandonment. And that's going to again make him look like he can't take care of his women. And it's more of a failure, an egg on his face. So then he says that he asked for a release after for years saying that you can't ask for a release and guys don't get releases. So then he's somehow saying that he went back to the church and asked them to release him from the women, which what does that say? He was willing to leave his wives. And when did this happen, Kody? This is a new lie I haven't heard before. So now that we know that this whole release happens, and even though we don't get the end of it in this episode, we don't get the answer from the church. And by the way, she's walking in what appears to be Salt Lake City, and the church is nowhere near where she's at. Like, the church is in Bluffdale and not the center of Salt Lake City. So this B-roll footage isn't even her going into the church. The church is in Bluffdale. It's not where she's at, but she meets with the church leaders and gets the release. And it is clear that she is done with this case or with this show, because this is what she posted on her Instagram. It's a strange thing when people feel like they already know you. TV as well, a version of your life. A real one, yes, but not the whole thing. Not the private thoughts or the quiet heartbreaks or the pieces you don't even understand yourself yet. After the cameras went away, I understood how much of my identity had been shaped by what people thought they knew. And rebuilding after that, honestly, it takes time. You start asking yourself, okay, who am I with all of that? Who am I when nobody's watching? That remaking has been messy and beautiful at the same time. And I'm still learning, still discovering parts of myself, and I didn't have space to explore back then. If you've ever felt misunderstood or flattened into one form of yourself, you get this. There's a whole world inside you that needs to be known, not just seen, known. And then another post she made is, you know what's been on my mind? For so many years, my life has been woven into something bigger, and people only ever saw me through that lens. And that's fine. I don't regret any of it. But it doesn't leave much room for finding out who you are outside of it. This chapter feels the first time I've really had room to ask myself what I want, what kind of life I want to build, who I am when I'm not being introduced as part of something else. It feels a little strange, a little exciting, and honestly, really grounded, like I'm meeting myself again. You know, one thing I said when they all chose to leave was that none of them would be able to be free of him and really process what they went through as long as they were on a show with him and as long as they continued to be the sister wives as a brand for TLC. Because until they were able to step away from this, what we're watching on television, they have no clue how to unpack and process what's gone on because they're still in the middle of the rat race. The rat race of making a show and storylines for a network television show. They are still at the behest of a production company and schedules and budgets and deliverables and showing up. And you know, it's strange that she's talking about this as though it's so in the faraway past. I mean, sure, the show hasn't filmed or maybe it hasn't been shooting right now, but this show is still on the air, so people still are only watching Janelle on Sister Wives. They're not seeing Janelle outside of Sister Wives. And if the cams are gone, it's really only been within the last month or two, maybe 3. And maybe those few months have been life-changing for her. Maybe it has given her the space to kind of think clearly again. One thing I will say, though, is that for her to say that she's lost who she is, I don't know, man. Like, she was in her 40s when the show was on the air. The show was 2010, and I think she's 55 years old. So she was 40 when the show started. You should have a pretty good idea of who you are by the time you're age 40. I'm 47. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm about. She might have been lost in a cult. She might have been lost in polygamy, but she knew who she was. Unless she's saying she doesn't know who she is without fame, or that how fame changed her, or that she hasn't had time to understand what's all happened. And I totally get that. I mean, if you've been in her place, and most of us haven't, how would you have time to process the death of your child and the demise of your marriage, all while it's playing out for network entertainment? You know, that would be, I can't imagine. I can't imagine that my entire divorce would become content on a television show and that my biggest heartaches would become network ratings and money for a network and income for me. You know, I have a pity for her in that she's getting out of this messy situation, but it's hard at times for me to feel sympathy when they knew what they were doing, and as long as they were making money, it was fine, you know?
And I'm glad she's pulling herself from it. And I hope she can heal from it. And I hope she can understand how she got there. I mean, it's never too late to learn who you are. But she's 55 at this point, right? So Her brain is fully developed. She's got many years ahead of her as long as she takes care of herself and her health stays well.
You know, there's no reason why she can't live 30, 40 more years. It's sad that, you know, she didn't know herself when she was 40, or it's sad that she needs to find herself now.
And it's sad that the show and the lifestyle caused so much damage in their lives, you know, but she's clear that she's done. The cameras are gone. She's done with the show. She couldn't be any more clear. And I looked at Christine's account, and she just made a website, and she says she's still filming Sister Wives. So I don't know that the show is even ended. I just think she might be going. I know people give Christine a lot of crap because she's on a show with her husband and they're talking about marriage. But I have to tell you something. I'm proud of Christine for using her time on the show to at least unravel some of the lies that they told while they were on the show. Right, I see a really clear plot for what she's doing this season. She's unpacking what she went through and the lies that were told about it on the show and trying to paint a picture about what polygamy is. That is not what they appeared or tried to show for years. Prior to her leaving, and just before she was about to leave, when she exposed the basement wife concept, even before, they always hid the messy parts of polygamy and they totally ignored the abuse or the trauma or whatever was happening. They tried to put on a nice little bow and make it seem like the world of polygamy was good. And what I see with Christine this season is her with her husband going through these kinds of conversations of her unpacking what she experienced, what is not normal, what is normal, how it's different.
And she actually has now a structure, an A and a marriage where she can look at, this is what I have and this is what I had, and this, you know, sometimes you don't even know how effed up something is until you have something completely different. You know, sometimes you don't even know how unhealthy the relationship you were in was until you get out. And then you're in a good relationship.
And that's kind of how I see things when it comes to Christine and David's plot. Janelle's plot is still not really there yet. But if she's done and she doesn't want to go there and she doesn't want to explore herself outside of it and fix any of that, that's fine too. I think I respect the way that Christine and Mary are handling it by really unpacking the pain of polygamy, right? And I hope at some point that in Janelle's healing, she will realize that this wasn't the perfect lifestyle. She doesn't have to have regrets, right? But I think it's okay to say you made mistakes. And I definitely think it's okay to say, you know, maybe things got off track in my life. Maybe I was led wrong. That doesn't mean that you regret having your children. It doesn't mean that you regret the experience, but it does acknowledge the trauma of what happened. Sometimes when you're in a cult, it's hard because you don't want to say you are wrong. It's really, really hard to accept that you were fooled. It's really, really hard to accept that you might have caused harm to your children by exposing them to this kind of lifestyle. That's, I'm sure for some of them, a very, very tough moment. I know when I've spoken to women that have left, they have told me about the biggest pains they have are not even necessarily like what they endured, but what they chose to bring their children into and how they wish they would have protected their children more and the regrets that they have.
About not giving their children stability that they deserved and their failures as a parent because of it. They were going through their own pain and their own abuse, and then thus exposing their children to abuse. And then that's just so much guilt. And I know so many women that have left that feel that guilt and still, you know, day in and day out have to have talks with their kids, apologizing for what they put them through.
So Janelle's kicked Kody and the camera's out for good. Tell me what your ideas are in the comments below. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, bestie.